The search for a new president of basketball operations for the Detroit Pistons is starting to heat up. Who are some names that you should be paying attention to, and when should you expect the hiring to happen? We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I am your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. It's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Later on in the podcast, we'll talk about how the losers of the first round could be helping the Detroit Pistons this offseason. Also, an idea floated by an ESPN I don't know what analyst, reporter, Brian Windhorst basically, shouted out an idea for the Detroit Pistons today on ESPN, possibly swapping head coaches with another franchise. We'll talk about that a little later as well. But I'm recording this right here on May 6th. And at this time, obviously, the Detroit Pistons don't have a president of basketball operations. And by not having a president of basketball operations, or as Bryce and Omari called it on our last episode with them last week, the hobo head of basketball operations. I don't know if you guys want to call it that or not. I'm just poking fun at them by calling it that. I don't know if I'm going to feel comfortable calling it. I'm going to keep going with the pobo. We'll just call it president of basketball operations. But anyways, it's starting to heat up. The search for them, for the right person, is starting to heat up. However, like I was saying, without having a president of basketball operations, you don't really got confirmation of anything with the Pistons right now. You don't got confirmation if Troy Weaver is sticking around at all. You don't have confirmation if they're going to be in the market for a new head coach. You don't really know what angle they're going to be trying to attack this offseason. You don't really know are they going to keep their first round pick? The lottery's in a week. Are they going to keep their first round pick? Who are some prospects that they would be fans of? You don't know any of that stuff because the Pistons don't have someone at the head of their basketball operations. And speaking of the lottery, let's go ahead and go to Tankathon and sim the lottery real quick and see where the Pistons end up in our spin of the day. 6 days, 48 minutes, 14 seconds from now. Let's sim lottery, see where the Pistons end up. Pistons fall to 4. First spin we do. And crazy thing is, before we keep going to the president of basketball operations, I haven't heard literally anyone talk about the lottery. Like that has to tell you how weak this draft class is apparently. Like I haven't seen anyone in the Pistons community really talk about the lottery. I definitely haven't seen anyone nationally talk about the lottery. Like no one even cares. And I understand it happens during the playoffs, but it happens during the playoffs every year, and people care about the lottery. It's usually an event that people talk about leading up. I haven't heard anyone talk about it. So, I mean, we've talked about this the last few episodes with different people. How valuable is this pick? If the Pistons fall, will it really matter? Is it going to be that big of a deal in this draft? Like, whatever. But they keep going with the president of basketball operations. So, Omari Sankofa, the second, who we were just talking about earlier, of the Detroit Free Press, wrote an article yesterday titled "Detroit Pistons President of Basketball Operations Search Gaining Steam, What We Need to Know." So I want to go throughout this article and break down for you guys, for those of you who do not have a Detroit Free Press subscription, let you guys know where the Pistons are at as of right now. So as I told you guys a few weeks ago, this search is going to be incredibly extensive. They're trying to do their due diligence. They're trying to be very careful, look every which way possible to make sure they get the right person. And Omari says here that the Pistons are getting help from a search firm named Turnkey ZRG. Now, I don't know anything about this search firm. I've never heard it before over the last few weeks. I started hearing about it a little bit over the last few weeks about the Pistons potentially being interested in having a search firm help them out, but I don't know anything about it itself. I've tried to do a little bit of research. Amari mentions that it's a noted search firm that works regularly with professional and college sports teams, including the Pistons in the past, to find qualified candidates for both positions, both front-facing and behind the scenes, including head coach, athletic director, and front office jobs. If you go look up Turnkey ZRG on Google, you will see their site pop up. I just wanted to read this for all you guys real quick. So you guys, if you guys want to have any kind of idea of what this search firm is, I wanted to read this for you guys. So this is on their homepage of turnkeyzrg.com. You go to their homepage, you click on their sports and entertainment. It says, Turnkey was born in sports and entertainment, revamped sports and entertainment businesses. Before we became executive recruiters, our hands-on experience in the field, combined with 25 years in executive searches, allow us to uniquely understand your role and culture. While our placements mostly work within the team and league space, our placements often come from other industries. Whether you're looking for someone with exact experience in our world or someone who have a fresh take on your business, we've got you covered. It says that sports and entertainment is led by Len Perna. Since 1996, Len Perna has been the founder, chairman, and CEO of Turnkey ZRG. Len has 30-plus years experience in the sports and entertainment industry with senior-level management in sales, event marketing, and management, sponsorships, venue feasibility and development, facility operations, licensing, and legal affairs. It says Len Perna has led over 1,400 executive searches in the sports field. And some recent clients, some people they've worked with when it comes to leading searches for them, the NFL, NBA, obviously. But if you go deeper, you see the Atlanta Hawks were a recent team they worked with, the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Francisco 49ers, the LA Dodgers, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the LA Rams, a few hockey teams. I don't know these teams' logos. I think this is the Boston Bruins. Columbus, I think that's the Columbus hockey team. And the Tigers, worked with the Tigers in the past. So that's to give you guys a little bit of a backdrop on the search firm that the Detroit Pistons are going through to help them find their next president of basketball operations. If you guys want to do your own little research on it, go right ahead. I try to do as much as possible. There isn't much out there, I'd say, for you guys to find. But if you do find something I wasn't able to, definitely let me know. But also, Mark Stein apparently has reported that the Pistons are going to show interest in the Milwaukee Bucks general manager, John Horst, after the Milwaukee Bucks obviously just got eliminated in the first round. Now, there has been some back and forth reporting that I've seen that the Pistons are going to have interest and reach out for a potential interview with him, but there's also, it's not 100% that the Bucks are going to grant that permission for the Detroit Pistons to have the interview. So stay tuned to that. I don't know how that's going to go. Don't know if they'll give us an answer of whether they actually allowed it. Maybe it just happens behind the scenes. It gets quiet, but I know just a few days ago, it was reported that they're not sure if the Pistons are even going to be given permission to do so. Mark Stein also goes on and mentions in his latest article that the Pistons, some names to pay attention to. My goodness, when it comes to the Pistons president basketball operations search, you got former Utah Jazz executive Dennis Lindsey, who is currently, I should say, not former, currently the Dallas Mavericks consultant. You got the current Minnesota Timberwolves president, Tim Connolly. I don't see why Tim Connolly would be leaving his job in Minnesota, especially how that team's going. I know they got a lot of stuff going on with ownership and possibly ownership being a little too cheap in this transition. So I don't know if that's going to play a part, but I don't really know why Tim Connolly would leave. I don't know about that. Then you got TV reporter Ian Begley listed, Detroit native Scott Perry, former Piston front office executive from 2000 2007, who worked recently with the New York Knicks as their GM. You also got JJ Redick, who seems a bit of a long shot when it comes to president of basketball operations. I'm interested to see if they move on from Monty, how his name pops back up potentially. But those are some names to pay attention to when it comes to the president of basketball operations. How I want to wrap this segment up is this. There's going to be a lot of names that you're going to hear probably. And we're not going to know. These guys aren't playing on a court every day. So it's not like you can analyze these dudes every day and come away feeling strongly about their evals, especially for guys who are maybe like lower tier in the front office that maybe are rising up through the ranks. The general public is not going to hear about guys rising through the ranks. The general public like us are not going to hear about guys, why are they rising up through the ranks? What makes them so great? Like these kind of dudes, you're not going to hear much about. You're not going to have much to go off of. And the thing I always say, I've said this a few times, is that if you do know one of these options, it's probably for a bad reason. It's probably because they got fired somewhere, and people are probably going to think negatively about them. For example, John Horst is being mentioned because he's currently the Milwaukee Bucks general manager, and because they've had 2 back-to-back unsuccessful seasons. That's why Tim Connolly's so confusing, because I don't really see why he would leave. But Dennis Lindsey, Scott Perry, who's no longer working with the New York Knicks, I just think it's hard to give like opinions on these guys, on these president basketball operations, because you just don't know. We don't know a lot about any of this stuff. Like, heck, the players don't even know who these guys are. Like, for real, like, seriously. The Pistons players can't even give input on this kind of stuff because they don't know anything about these guys. Like, so I think it's interesting. I do like the fact that the Pistons went out and got a search firm to try to look under every spot, be as in detailed as possible to make sure they're being doing their due diligence after what they did last year with the coaching search. I think a lot of people, rightfully so, criticize how they went about that. So I think that it's starting to heat up. I think I wouldn't be surprised within the next 2 weeks if they come to a hiring, especially because, like I said, the lottery is in 6 days and in 6 days, and they need to have somebody, obviously, for the lottery and for the draft. Like, they need to have someone. The combine's coming around. You have to start doing scouting. Like, how are you going to do that without president basketball operations? That's not even talking about like potential trades, offseason moves and free agency, figuring out what your vision for this team moving forward is. Like, you got to speed. Like, I don't want to put pressure on them to speed it up, but you do got to speed it up. Like, you got to get somebody in here. So we'll see what happens. Let me know in the comment section down below if you guys have any names that you're specifically interested in for the Detroit Pistons to be a president of basketball operations. Again, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Cougar Hill. When we come back, how are first-round losers, first-round teams that have been eliminated, possibly helping the Detroit Pistons? We'll talk about that when we come back. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get on your way to being your best self. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today I want to tell you guys how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. Like I've told you guys many times, I use this podcast as like basically a therapy session. I come on here every 5 days a week and just vent about the Detroit Pistons. We have a lot of rants go on in the podcast, but like I've told you guys many times before, a lot of people have a lot more important things going on in their life rather than how their favorite sports team's doing, decisions that they're making, not making. And it's important to get those other things off your chest every once in a while. If you don't have a daily podcast to just go and rant on, and if you're thinking of trying that and starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. You visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA and you'll get 10% off your first month. And if you head on there, you're not vibing with the online therapist, you can switch just like that to a different one. Again, it's designed to be flexible and suited to your own schedule. That goes from your schedule all the way to this online therapist that you are working with. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month with BetterHelp. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. So a few weeks ago, I think it was maybe 2 weeks ago, we recorded a podcast, and I was talking about how the outcomes of the first round, the outcomes of these playoffs could play a big part in what goes on with the Detroit Pistons this offseason. Well, the first round has officially ended. First of all, that was an incredible first round. I had a lot of fun watching all the first round series. I hope you guys also have been watching NBA playoffs. It gives you a better idea of how far the Pistons are. It gives you an idea of what good teams look like, how they play. It gives you an idea of what other teams' schemes look like. You should be watching playoff basketball. Also, if you just want to take your mind off the Pistons, just watch good basketball, you can do that. Like, I don't have any problem. I don't have any problem with anyone saying, you know, I'm not going to think about the Pistons at all. I'm not going to try to connect to the Pistons. I just want to watch good basketball and have fun. And I think this playoffs has done that. This has been a really good playoff so far. A few really good first round series. But anyways, the teams that were eliminated in the first round, I think you are slowly but surely starting to see how their disappointment is potentially going to impact maybe not just, obviously not just the Pistons, but the rest of the NBA. We can go down the line here. So let's start with the New Orleans Pelicans. We just had the Locked On Pelicans host on the podcast last week to talk about Brandon Ingram potentially being available and whether the Pistons should go and be interested in Brandon Ingram joining the Detroit Pistons, trading for Brandon Ingram, giving up the assets to get Brandon Ingram. And today, I saw this report from, it wasn't just from this guy, but I saw it on Twitter, from Jake. His name is Jake Wenback, I want to say. He said the Pelicans are expected to explore trade scenarios surrounding Brandon Ingram this offseason as Ingram enters the final year of his contract. New Orleans may look into moving the All-Star forward for fresh assets and insert Trey Murphy III into the starting lineup moving forward. And he obviously, like I said, he's not the only one that's been reporting this. Brian Windhorst said something about it a few days ago on ESPN, and Woj just talked about it. It seems like general knowledge that the New Orleans Pelicans will be moving on from Brandon Ingram this offseason. And whether he ends up with the Detroit Pistons or not, we'll see. But that's just another name, an outcome of the first round that has opened itself up for the Detroit Pistons this offseason. Now you move on to the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers one is really interesting. They lost to the Dallas Mavericks because Kawhi Leonard got hurt again, and they weren't able to finish the season healthy once again. They just signed Kawhi Leonard before the season to a 3-year, $150 million extension. Paul George has not agreed to an extension. He is a free agent. And the Clippers reportedly have been giving him less than max dollars as their offer. And he has declined every single one. So he's entering free agency. Sounds like the 76ers are going to be interested. Obviously, there's going to be other teams interested. It's Paul George. He's a really good player, obviously. He's an all-star. My question is, should the Pistons be interested in Paul George? I think so, obviously. Now, would he have any interest in the Detroit Pistons? Absolutely not. Probably not. Unless I think the only way the Pistons could even try to get him to listen to them is if they paid him the most possible for 2 to 3 years. Give him his last big payday. Is another team going to be willing to give him that type of payday for the next 2 to 3 years? Doesn't seem like Clippers are willing to. Could the Pistons being willing to give him the absolute max amount of dollars for 3 years? Is that something that would entice him, intrigue him? Who knows? We'll see. Who knows if that would? I'd like to say I would guess probably not. I don't think the Pistons. I don't think Paul George probably has any interest at all for the Pistons to even try to contact him with where they're at. I have to assume he wants to try to win a championship before his career, before the end of his career. But that's just another situation that opens itself up. Who knows? The Phoenix Suns. That's another team to really pay attention to, man. Another team to really pay attention to, because they're in that second apron. We've talked about the second apron multiple times on this podcast. A lot of these teams are going to be in the second apron or nearing the second apron. I don't think teams are going to want to stay in that second apron. People are talking right now like they don't care. I know James Jones came out and basically his whole attitude seemed to me like he just doesn't care. That's the GM of the Phoenix Suns. I don't believe that's going to be the case when it actually gets here. Once they realize what they can and can't, more so can't do, because I don't know how much they can do. Once they realize that, I think things will change. And the Phoenix Suns, I think there is a possibility that they may have to pivot in a direction that involves rebuilding or retooling the team completely around Devin Booker. And as the Detroit Pistons, a team with $60 million in cap space, could they be somebody that helps facilitate a 3-team trade that takes off some salary off a team to help the Phoenix Suns try to retool it? Potentially. We'll see what happens. The Lakers, I don't think the Lakers really have anything happening. We've mentioned D'Lo, but he's a free agent. He was going to be a free agent nonetheless. It doesn't seem like the Lakers are going to have much interest in bringing him back. I think he could be a legit target. I think he will be someone you hear about being interested, or the Pistons being interested in him this offseason. I think he makes somewhat of sense. Really, really, really good shooter, a secondary playmaker for the Detroit Pistons. Really good offensive player, can run pick and roll, can facilitate for others, take the ball out of his hands, help balance the offensive flow. Especially for the next 2 to 3 years type of contract. I think he could be someone you hear about. The Miami Heat. Sounds like Jimmy Butler. Pat Riley went scored today. I don't know what he was on. Pat Riley came out and was just torturing everybody. Jimmy, Udonis Haslam, like he was just coming out and lost it. Like he was pissed. But if they do decide to trade Jimmy Butler somewhere, again, it's the situation where maybe the Pistons could get involved in as a 3-team trade. Maybe they could go and try to get involved in a Tyler Hero trade. If the Heat do try to blow it up and trade Jimmy Butler and want to trade Tyler Hero, Pat Riley said something about him not being able to play a full season. Like, I don't know what was going on with Pat Riley. When you have the stripes he does, I guess you can say whatever the hell you want. But that dude is crazy, man. But would the Pistons be interested in Tyler Hero? I think so. Could the Pistons help facilitate a trade for Jimmy Butler if he is actually traded from the Heat? Yeah, they could do that. They're one of the teams that can do that. So that's another team that could potentially impact the Detroit Pistons. The Milwaukee Bucks, so you're already seeing it in the first segment. Their GM might be coming over to the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons may be interested in their GM because of how disappointing these 2 seasons have went. The new GM, the new president of basketball operations that takes over the Milwaukee Bucks, are they going to want to move off Chris Middleton? Will the Pistons have interest in him? I think so, probably. Would they want to take on his contract? Could the Pistons help facilitate them rebuilding around Giannis if they want to go that route? Yeah, I think they could by taking on larger contracts in a 3-team deal. Like, that's just another team, because of how disappointing their season went. Not only could the Pistons acquire a player from their team, again, they can help facilitate them making the next move, and maybe the Pistons get paid for doing so. And then obviously the Philadelphia 76ers, the biggest connection is obviously Tobias Harris, with him being a free agent, wanting to be in Detroit, wanting to come back to Detroit. And it doesn't seem like the Philadelphia 76ers want him back at all. So that's the biggest connection there. This playoffs is really like the playoffs is going to impact the Detroit Pistons offseason a lot. That first round playoff series across East and West, you're going to see how it impacts the Pistons and how it trickles down to the Pistons. And could any of the second round series potentially do so? I mean, the Cavaliers, if they go out in embarrassing fashion, who knows what happens over there? Do they want to start retooling? Are guys available? Do they want to give up on some dudes? Do they want to move some guys? Who knows? But after that, I don't think anything else really opens itself up. The one team I do want to throw out there that I want to pay attention to is the Timberwolves, because they have this thing going on with ownership. Obviously, Alex Rodriguez, this whole, I'm sure you guys have seen the reporting on it. Who knows what's going on with their team and the ownership, but basically sounds like that the ownership is getting a little cheap. They're going to be in the second apron. Are they going to want to stay in the second apron? I'm going to go ahead and say again, no. But will they want to move on from Rudy Gobert? No. Anthony Edwards? No. Cat? No. After this season, I have to say no. So could another contract on the books be available because they want to get out from that second apron? And if that's the case, watch for Naz Reid. If they have to move off of Naz Reid because of the second apron, the Pistons should be all in on that. Like, that's something that could happen. And maybe if the Timberwolves get bounced in the second round, instead of making it deeper in the playoffs, maybe they're more willing to do something like that. I think that's something that you should pay attention to. So that's all I've got with that, though. These playoffs, there's going to be a lot of trickling down effects for the Detroit Pistons in their offseason this year. Let me know a team that you guys are watching that potentially could be impacting the Pistons from these playoffs. Is there a player you're looking at? Is there a team situation that you think could help the Pistons? Again, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. When we come back, will the Detroit Pistons be swapping head coaches with a Western Conference team? We'll talk about that when we come back. This Mother's Day, get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. Get thoughtful gifts she deserves with the convenience you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive to her door with DoorDash. Last year, I used DoorDash for Mother's Day, and I gave my mom some flowers, got some flowers sent to her while I was at work. She really enjoyed it. Heck, for Valentine's Day last year, me and my wife were at work. I had some flowers and chocolates sent to her work while I was at work, and they both really enjoyed it through DoorDash. I've been using DoorDash for years. Incredibly useful. Definitely should be checking it out. Get a Mother's Day gift as unique as she is with DoorDash. Use code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply again with DoorDash. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. I'm not going to spend too long on this segment because I have a very quick answer and then we'll wrap it up. Brian Windhorst said on ESPN today, he was on First Take and then he went on his radio show after and said it again. So I have to assume there's a little some whispers going on across the league in one direction. However, he suggested could the Pistons just swap with the Lakers and Darvin Ham ends up in Detroit and Monty Williams ends up in LA. Now, the Darvin Ham aspect, I do not want the Pistons to hire Darvin Ham. Not interested. I get that he's from Detroit or he played for the Detroit Pistons. He has those Detroit ties. I've said this before in the podcast. I'm going to say it again. I do not want this team to hire somebody just because they have ties to the Pistons. I don't want this team to hire anybody just because they have ties to Detroit. I want them to hire somebody who is the best possible option. I don't care if they're from Alaska, Hawaii, Detroit, Tennessee, Alabama. If you are the best option for what they're asking for, go get that guy. I could care less about the ties. And I think that's why you're hearing the Darvin Ham connection from Brian Windhorst, because he has connection to the Pistons. Not interested in Darvin Ham. However, today on First Take, they asked about potential coaches for the LA Lakers. Who could they be interested in? Who are some coaches that could become available? And they were like, Ty Lue. And he was like, no, Ty Lue's definitely not going to become available. He's probably going to sign an extension. Jason Kidd, he just signed an extension. Like, these guys that the Lakers players potentially could like just aren't available. So they were like, okay, Brian, well, is there a coach that you should be paying attention to? Like, or it wasn't First Take, it was Get Up. I'm sorry. Is there head coaches across the league that could potentially become available besides the ones we mentioned? Who is there anyone we should pay attention to? And he went out of his way. He was like, there's one team that you guys should be paying attention to, and this is the Detroit Pistons. They are looking for a president of basketball operations. I'm not sure Monty Williams survives that, and if he doesn't, the Lakers could show interest in him. He went on to talk about, will Monty even want to coach the Lakers if that's the case? So I think with him mentioning that, I don't think Brian Windhorst just mentions things for no reason. Obviously, the famous meme of him doing about what's going on, like we all know about that. So I don't think he would mention that if there isn't some kind of whispers going around that it looks like Monty Williams will be losing his job. And putting his name out there for the Lakers job, I think could potentially be doing Monty a solid, but who knows? Maybe I'm reading it too deep into that. I don't know if Brian has a relationship with a Monty agent or something. Who knows? I know like Woj and Shams do that all the time. So, but I don't know about Brian's connections like that. But either way, I think that shows that there's whispers about Monty losing his job. So I think that angle, you can look at it from the angle of, will the Pistons swap head coach with the Lakers and just go after Darvin Ham? I would rather not. I'd just get like the best guy possible. Like get a younger coach. Since you're going to be paying Monty all this money, get a younger coach and not pay him as much and let him grow with your team. Or that's what I would do. Or just get the best guy for the job. Like I said, I don't care where they're from and what ties they have. Just get the best person for the job. So that's how I feel about it. But let me know in the comment section down below how you guys feel. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Until next time, catch you later. Peace out.